This team being Cleveland?
Well, I think they can be good enough to win the division, and that's saying a lot, seeing as how the AFC North has been dominated for the better part of the last 2 decades by 2 teams, that being the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I mean, CC, you and I were looking at their skill positions on paper. You could make the argument that they have the best skill positions of any team in the National Football League. I mean, that's how good it is.
Go through it.
Well, they had Jarvis Landry from last year and David Njoku, a former first-round pick. They added to and Nick Chubb, who was a third-round pick and a find by John Dorsey in last year's draft. But you add Kareem Hunt to that. Eventually, you'll get him after he serves whatever punishment Roger Goodell hands down. Okay, you go out and you make the trade for Odell Beckham Jr., who's arguably the best receiver in the National Football League, especially when you factor in age. So I think you give your young quarterback and your new head coach, first time doing that job, Freddie Kitchens, you give them every opportunity to be successful. You support them. And then, oh, by the way, you make some sneaky good moves in making sure that you fortify that defensive front, because you had to trade away something in order to get Odell Beckham Jr. You traded away a box safety in Jabril Peppers. But guess what else you did? You signed Sheldon Richardson from the Minnesota Vikings in free agency, defensive tackle, and you traded for Olivier Vernon. So, yeah, if I'm going to get rid of a run support safety, it makes sense to have a really strong defensive line. All of a sudden, I don't have to have the urgency to drop an extra defender down in the box to stop the run. So I look at all the moves that John Dorsey has made over the last week or so, and I don't know how you can't love what he's doing in terms of building this football team.
And since we've been on the air, they added another tight end, Demetrius Harris from Kansas City, to maybe go alongside Njoku. He's not a frontline guy, star player, but it's a good addition and a player that Dorsey is familiar with from his time in Kansas City, similar to the Kareem Hunt situation. But you mentioned Olivier Vernon. It's not just that you add Olivier Vernon. It's the guy who's going to be on the other side of the defensive line. Yes, Myles Garrett. And one of the reasons I thought they might draft Bradley Chubb a year ago was so they could have those bookend D-ends as far as rushing the passer. Now you're in a different situation, right? Now you have Olivier Vernon on one side of the defense. You've got Myles Garrett on the other side, and Denzel Ward is a shutdown corner. We're talking a couple blue chippers and another possible blue chipper. Like you've got the buildings of an excellent football team, and we haven't mentioned Baker. And so that's what Odell is walking into. That's where the Browns right now can say, we can compete immediately. Last year was the first time they had a winning record in the division since that division existed. Last year was the first time they had a winning divisional record since it was the AFC Central. And back in 2002, like they are turning it, they appear to be turning it around immediately.
The one thing we're not talking about is Freddie Kitchens as the first-time head coach. How do you manage and handle? It's a lot of weapons. Do you think he'll be successful there?
The reason why I have a lot of confidence in Kitchen is because what Dorsey and the other front office people saw when he was the interim coach. Also, I had the luxury of, I did a game during the season. I called the Browns, week number 14, Browns Camp Panthers, and I went back and looked through some of my notes, and I went through all my interviews, and I sat down with Freddie Kitchens, former quarterback from University of Alabama, and he's about football. And he's about ball, and he's about getting talented players. But what people miss with Freddie Kitchens, when they made him the offensive coordinator, we're talking about all these sexy, the pass catchers, Landry, Odell. He started running the ball immediately. That was the first thing he did to be able to help out Baker Mayfield to be able to stabilize that offense. Their offensive line is totally underrated. I would say one of the most underrated offensive lines. So you're going to be able to get the ball to these skilled people. So Freddie Kitchens, he should be part of the conversation, because Dorsey and the front office there, they had the chance. Bruce Arians, he woke up this morning, the head coach in Tampa Bay. You think he ain't rethinking? Man, what about Mike McCarthy? They thought he was a shoo-in for this deal. You think he didn't wake up today and be like, man, I wish I was in Cleveland? Freddie Kitchens went from nowhere to having one of the best jobs right now in the NFL, and it's supported by the young talent. Baker Mayfield, 23. Nick Chubb, starting running back, 23. Kareem Hunt, after a suspension, 23. Jarvis Landry, oh man, he's old, 26. Odell Beckham, 26. Antonio Callaway, high draft pick out of Florida. Don't forget him. Now. He's 22. Njoku, the tight end, he's 22. So this is the most exciting young group of players that I have seen since the young Dallas Cowboys. Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin. Man, they had some. Jay Novacek, right? Moose Johnson.
Alvin.
Oh, Alvin Harper as a wide receiver.
And on the other side of the ball, just like you were talking about with the Cowboys, they had Darren Woodson, they had Leon Lett around the same generation.
Russell Merrill.
That's Myles Garrett, that's Denzel Ward.
Yes. No, he's absolutely right. And it's funny that he brings up the Dallas Cowboys because that's how I know Freddie Kitchens. He was on the coaching staff down in Dallas when I started out my career under Bill Parcells. And Freddie is a football guy, but I like what John Dorsey has done to support him with the coaching staff hires.
Yes.
Because Adam Henry, who was Odell Beckham Jr.'s position coach at LSU
it's huge
and in New York for the first 4 years of his career, is the wide receivers coach for the Cleveland Browns. So in terms of being able to manage that personality,
one person, and not Odell's dad, not some other wide receiver, not Chris Carter, because he don't listen to me because I tell him. Adam Henry is the voice. A lot of times when you're on a little league field and you yelling, the little kids be like, that's coach. That's Odell Beckham's personal coach. So I believe they will get the absolute best out of him. Great point.
No doubt about that. And then you also look at the fact that they hired Steve Wilks as their defensive coordinator. Now, I know Steve Wilks' tenure as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals didn't go well, but it's somebody that has head coaching experience on that staff, and Freddie Kitchens is going to need to lean on that experience at some point because this is his first time doing the job. There inevitably is going to be a learning curve. So I like how John Dorsey is kind of arranging all the moving parts that they got in Cleveland, giving his young quarterback and his new head coach an opportunity to have success.
And so much of the conversation about Odell the last couple of years have been about injury, interview, or distraction. I think it's important to remind everyone how damn good this guy is. I think there's 3 receivers in the league right now that I think most people believe one day will join Chris Carter in the Hall of Fame. Antonio Brown, Larry Fitzgerald, Julio Jones. They're at least tracking towards it. Larry's already done enough, no question. Odell's too young to say that about him yet. But show the audience their first 59 games, those 4 guys compared to him. Odell's got them all clipped in everything, except for Julio's got him by what? Yards. What is that? 43 yards? And so, I mean, that is Odell's first 59 games. The level of production is unquestioned, all-time great stuff. And the reason I didn't want to put up some of the guys who are already in the Hall is because it's unfair, because it's such a more passing league now. The numbers are tilted, but those are guys playing in the same era. Larry, obviously, older than the group. And Odell's first 59 games, nobody touches what he's done. And so what he needs to do is stay healthy, because what he has now is the best quarterback he's ever played with by far. So that's
and there's a graphic of the last 30 games he played in that's not as Hall of Fame like too. So he need to get his butt on the field.
Well, the last 30 games he's played in, it's the same, but it's the last 30 games he's been eligible for is what you're saying. The last 2 seasons, last 32 games the Giants have.
Yeah, you know.
I just wanted to make sure I'm sure.
Right now, somewhere Hugh Jackson's going, wait, that's the Browns?
Yeah, well.
Doesn't look anything like last year.
Never jumped in that lake up there.
That was a mistake.
It was the beginning of the end for Hugh Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris.